So first off, I know most people watching this video who are huge Stolas fans and who love this show to death are going to bash at me in the comments section saying, "Oh, why do you think Stolas should have been the villain? Like, why would you want to rewrite him as the villain? He was never the villain in the first place." That's where you're wrong. Stolas actually, at least during the pilot episode, was written to be the villain, and then Brandon went to Vivian and was like, or Vivian went to Brandon and was like, "Hey, I feel like we should make Stolas Blitz's love interest." So yeah, if you want to type in the comment section, complaining and whining, saying, "Oh, Stolas should have never been the villain," like, go ahead, it'll boost this video and I'll get more views. Anyways, so this is basically why I think Stolas would have been a really great villain and how I would have rewritten Stolas as being a villain. Also, this is my very first time, doing a rewriting of a character. So, hopefully y'all like it. I don't know. So, in my personal opinion, I think Helva Boss has way too many villains. I mean, I feel like the main villain is definitely Stella, maybe Stryker. And I do want to rewrite Stella, although we're focusing more on Stolas. We are focusing on Stolas in this part. Although I will definitely do Stella in a different video because, oh my god, she needs to be rewritten because her writing is horrible. Same with Stryker and definitely Androlphus. But for this episode, for this video only, we are definitely doing Stolas. So, here is how I would rewrite Stolas as a villain. So, it starts out, we'll go with Pilot Stolas. He was more arrogant, he seemed like more abusive. Now, for Pilot Stolas, we only hear 3 or 4 lines out of him, but that's enough just to get into perspective. If we would have seen more of Pilot Stolas, I feel like we would have, heard more from him. If we would have heard more from him, we could have seen Pilot Stolas' true colors. Here is how I think Pilot Stolas would have been a great villain. And how I would have rewritten him to be the villain, the main villain of the show. And the only villain of the show. We're gonna push Stella out of the way just for a moment. So here is how I think Stolas would have been a good villain. And here is how I would have rewritten him. We'll talk about the rewriting first. So, it starts out, and Stolas is very arrogant, kind of just a rich asshole. He cares about money, he cares about power, he just cares about wealth and power. That's pretty much all he cares about. More power over money. He loves intimidating people, including imps. And while, yes, imps do work in the palace for him, they don't really respect him, or they do respect him, but they're not really scared of him. They don't really, they obey him, but only because they don't want to get their heads chopped off, or because he actually pays them good money. He wants control. He wants an imp to be like, "Oh, Stolas, I respect you, I bow down to you, blah, blah, blah." I don't know if I would keep the whole, part of Stolas and Blitz meeting as kids. I think I would maybe take that trope out. So let's say Stolas and Blitz didn't meet as kids. Let's say, Blitz has his business, but it's literally just killing people in hell. He has absolutely no way of getting to the overworld, and let's say Blitz has no idea what the grimoire is. Like, so he has absolutely no way of getting up into the mortal realm. And so Stolas is, watching TV or something, or he sees in the newspaper as he's like drinking his morning coffee a ad for IMP, and it says, we need something for access to the mortal realm, I'll pay you whatever. And so Stolas calls Blitz, and of course Blitz has heard of the Goetia family, but of course, like, he doesn't really care about, royalty that much. And so he, answers the phone. Stolas is like, hey, come by to my palace. I want to have a talk with you about your business. And so Blitz is like, hey, that's a perfect idea. And so Blitz goes to the palace, they sit down, they have a talk. And Stolas is at first like, I need you to pay me like $1,000 a month just for this grimoire. And of course, like, Blitz is like, this is when Blitz is first starting his business. And Blitz is like, whoa, okay, like, that's way too much money. I'm not doing that. And Stolas is like, well, and they're trying to, figure out some deal. And as they're talking about it, they're like getting drunk. Like, they're, Stolas offers drinks, so they're like drinking. And it gets to the point where they're so drunk that Stolas is like, you know what? How about you do it with me, and then I'll give you the grimoire. And, Blitz is already like wasted, so he's like, yeah, so they do it. You already know what I'm talking about. And then, Blitz wakes up, like, not remembering what happened, but just takes the grimoire and then sneaks out. Now, again, I'm not mentioning Stella in this, but I wouldn't, have him jump out. No, I would have him jump out the window, but not have, like, him fall on the table with Stella and all her friends. How she would find out would be totally different. Again, that's going to be in a different video. So he escapes, and, he goes out. And, of course, like, Blitz doesn't really get drunk often. So, like, he knows for a fact he has a hangover, but he doesn't remember what happened, so he just leaves. Stolas wakes up, actually remembering what happened, and so he's like, oh shit, I just got diddled. That's a horrible word choice, but I'm trying not to, like, cuss too much in this video. I just got, fucked by an imp. And I just gave him my grimoire. And again, this version of Stolas really cares about power. And also, he really cares about his position as royalty. So half of him is like, oh yes, like, I get to control this imp. I can make him do whatever I want. But the other half of him is like, oh shit. I don't really care about cussing too much. It's been like 9 minutes. Stolas is like, oh shit. If Paimon or Andrilphus or, like, anybody else finds out that I've been, that I'm lending my grimoire to a lower class imp, I could lose my status, I could lose my power, or worse, I could be killed. And so he calls Blitz, and he's like, hey, like, do you remember anything that happened last night? And Blitz is like, not really, but I have your book, and so we can, like, do missions on the mortal realm now. And so Stolas is like, that's great, but there has to be a little deal. And of course, Blitz has already, like, forgotten, like, what he did. And so he's like, if it's about money, then, like, I'm not gonna have, like, that much to pay you once a month. And Stolas is like, well, no. How about this? And this is like, what happened the night before or last night. So Stolas says, either you can pay me once a month, or once a month on the full moon, you return the book to me and we do it. And, Blitz is kind of like silent on the call. He's like contemplating, and he's like, you know what? Like, that works out. Like, okay, that's fine with me. And so the first, or technically the second time they do it, although this is the first time Blitz isn't drunk while doing it, same with Stolas. First time they do it, Blitz is like, whatever. Like, I know for a fact this is just for sex. But every single time they do it, Stolas manipulates him and is basically like, oh, I love you, like, you're such a, good imp, whatever. Basically praising him, but also belittling him. And this version of Blitz has never really been in a good relationship. I'm not really going to talk about, like, Verosika. But let's just say Verosika was, like, a really, like, toxic relationship for him. And, like, she was the problem. But, again, we're not really getting into Verosika. So let's say, like, Blitz has never had an actual good relationship before. And so he thinks Stolas, by saying, I love you and all this, and, like, even after, like, they've had, sex, like, they'll cuddle and, like, watch movies and stuff. And so Blitz thinks, oh, this guy definitely loves me. And so he'll go and he'll tell Moxie and Millie and Luna, like, almost every single time. And they're all like, dude, like, he's definitely using you. And of course, Blitz doesn't see that. Now, eventually, with Stolas, he does end up getting caught. And again, I'm not going to, like, say how Stella finds out. Stella is the one who does find out. Stella eventually finds out, and she's like, okay, you either need to tell this imp that what you're doing, what you're actually doing, and you need to, stop this whole trade-off and just keep the grimoire, or, like, I will get Androphis to call Satan so we can either get you executed or just have you stripped of your title. And of course, Stolas is like, oh, I don't want to be executed, but most importantly, he doesn't want to lose his power. He doesn't want to lose his money. So he calls up Blitz and he's like, hey, can you come by the palace? And Blitz is like, oh, it's not even the full moon yet. And he's like, yeah, but I need to talk to you about something. So Blitz comes up, and Blitz is, getting ready, and Blitz is like, oh, this is definitely a date. Kind of like the opposite of Ozzy's, where instead of Stolas thinking it's a date, it's Blitz thinking it's a date. So Blitz is, like, madly in love with Stolas around this point. So Blitz, gets ready, gets dressed, goes to the palace. He's all dressed up, and he goes in, and Stolas, like, sits down, and he's like kind of silent, and Blitz is like, okay, like, what are we doing? Like, is this, like, do you have an arrangement on the full moon? Or, like, what's going on? Why am I, like, doing you this early into the month? And Stolas is like, I need to confess something, and Blitz is like, oh, I need to confess something too. And Stolas is like, well, I'll confess first, and he tells Blitz, like, I need my grimoire back permanently. They found out, you know, that I've just been lending it to you for sex. And if I don't get it back, I could be killed, executed. And Blitz is like, he's like, what do you mean, like, only for sex? Like, I thought you loved me. And Stolas is like, Stolas starts gaslighting him, being like, oh, I never said I loved you. And Blitz is like, no, you've said you loved me multiple times. And Stolas is like, nope, never said that. You're out of your mind. Like, please, get out of my palace before I make you. And so he kicks Blitz out, and, Blitz goes home. Blitz is, like, livid. He's like, I can't believe for, like, the past, like, year, past, several months, you've been telling me that you love me and you give me small gifts, only for me to find out that, like, you're basically only using me for power and stuff like that. And so now you may be wondering, if I did, make Stolas a villain, would I have him killed? And my answer would be yes, I would. It's either I would have him be killed or just watch everything around him crumble. But we'll just go with the fact that, let's just say, Blitz kills him. Now, I know that's, a weird assumption to make. Also, I apologize if you hear background noise. I'm, like, moving to my room because my dad is home now. But let's say that Blitz kills him. Let's say Blitz gets so angry at the fact that for, months up to a year, that Stolas has been using him this entire time. And let's say he actually gets his hands on a Carmine rifle and, let's say, ends up, like, shooting him. That's one way I think Stolas could be killed, like, as the villain. Now, again, I'm not going to bring, like, Stella into this, or Stryker. That'll be for a different video. I know for a fact I said I would talk about Stolas, but I also have to, like, bring in Blitz a little bit as well, just for this. I'm trying to, like, think. I'm not going off of a script in this video. I'm trying to think of a way, like, I could have Stolas, like, lose everything. And, him, without him getting killed. And, I mean, maybe it could be, like, Mastermind, where, like, he just confesses that, like, he's done all this just for, like, his pleasure. And so, like, they strip him of his title, and they're like, you have to live, like, among the imps now. But for now, his ending would definitely be, like, Blitz getting his revenge and, like, killing him. So, Um, that's about it. I will definitely be doing more of these. I'm probably going to do like Stella or Octavia next. One last thing before the video ends, because a lot of people may be like, oh, what about Octavia? I would, if I did rewrite this, I would definitely have Octavia be younger, like definitely around like maybe like 6 or 7. And like Octavia is one thing he does still care about. And, you know, he loves Octavia with all of his heart, but he also loves his power and money a lot more. And that kind of, you know, blinds him from the fact that, like, he has to be a good daughter. But we're not really going to get too much into that. So that's going to be the end of this video. I hope y'all enjoyed my constant rambling about nonsense. Again, I didn't go off a script in this video. This kind of just came up in my mind and I wanted to do this. So hope y'all enjoyed.